Hi, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson and you're watching Get Your Sax Together. Every week I sax up your Sunday with free lessons covering technique, tips on improvising and my unique breakdowns of the world's most famous sax lines. In today's free online saxophone lesson, you're going to learn one of the most important and neglected aspects of playing, and that is intonation, or how to play in tune. Intonation is a huge topic to cover in one lesson, so I'm going to try and hit some of the most important topics without going on for too long. This all applies if you're a beginner on sax or an intermediate, and if you play alto, tenor or any other sax. You'll learn how to tune notes, why you're probably out of tune at the moment, and how to use an electronic tuner. And keep watching to the end as I show you how to take your intonation to the next level. In this lesson, we're going to try and unpack all this intonation stuff. But just before we do, let me quickly remind you that you can get your free PDF worksheet for this video by clicking the link in the description. That has all the main points from today's lesson in a handy cheat sheet that you can print off and keep on your music stand. Also, if you're enjoying this channel, go and check out my free 1-hour saxophone success masterclass, which is an awesome special extended lesson with me covering a bunch of essential saxophone topics. This could really transform your playing immediately. So jump on board by clicking the link in the description or use the URL below. Right, let's get on with the lesson and get in tune. If there's one thing that's certain to sow the seeds of discontent in any professional playing situation, it's intonation. Wars have been fought over less and many friendships have been ruined over tuning. For some reason, the topic of tuning seems to trigger a deep and personal emotional response in musicians, and I have no idea why. You would offend someone less by saying they stink compared to saying they're playing out of tune. And I've seen and experienced this for myself firsthand on many occasions. Here's a word of advice: be very careful about telling someone they're playing out of tune. Be as diplomatic as you can and be prepared to eat some humble pie along the way. I remember on Jersey Boys, we all bought snark tuners at one point to try and resolve the I'm right, you're wrong mentality that was rearing its ugly head every night. And it proved to be a very enlightening experience for all concerned. It turned out that at various times, all the horns in the pit were out of tune. And this highlights the fact that we all hear pitch slightly differently. One man's sharp is another man's flat. I remember hearing Jackie McLean play live once, and to my ear, he was lemon-suckingly sharp. I'm talking at least a quarter tone sharp. But I'm sure that if you asked him, he would say he was in tune. And this is true for all of us. We all hear intonation differently. It's like the old saying that I love regarding alto saxophonists: you're better to be sharp than out of tune. But intonation is even more nuanced than individual perception, because the human brain perceives pitch differently at different volumes as well. A note played very quietly will appear sharper to our ears compared to the same note played loudly at exactly the same pitch. And as we'll see later, the story doesn't end there, as being perfectly in tune is not the same as the equally tempered scale that we hear on a piano or see on a digital tuner. That's a lot to deal with, but when you get this stuff together, it will make a huge difference to how good you sound. Huge. One of the most instant identifiers of a beginner, quite apart from tone and timing, is how out of tune they play. Trying to play a gig with someone who has faulty intonation is like hell on earth to me, whereas doing a gig with a fantastic musician who has impeccable tuning is like a dream come true. It's just so easy and enjoyable. Let's start by looking at some of the intonation problems that we face as saxophonists. It's no coincidence that saxophonists are often out of tune. The dice are totally loaded against us from the start. Number one, the saxophone itself is inherently out of tune. Unavoidable flaws in the physics of the saxophone mean that different notes are either flat or sharp. These inconsistencies vary from instrument to instrument, but some common problems are low D in E flat being flat, middle B in C playing flat, second octave D, E flat and E being sharp, and high C sharp playing sharp. Every instrument will have many more discrepancies, but those are a few of the common ones, along with an overall tendency for low notes to be flat and high notes to be sharp. Also, the ambient temperature makes a big difference to tuning. We don't just say do warm up for no reason. As well as warming up our physical muscular systems, the brass and air inside your sax needs to warm up or you'll sound flat. Just try playing in a freezing rehearsal studio or in a marching band outside on a cold day to experience this for yourself. And by the same token, on a boiling hot stage on a sweaty gig, your sax will play really sharp. Even reeds make a difference to intonation, with softer reeds tending to blow flatter. The moral of the story is this: it's not your fault that you play out of tune, but you've got to learn how to do something about it. The first thing you'll see an inexperienced saxophonist do to get in tune is constantly fiddle about with the position of their mouthpiece. But hang on, it's the position of the mouthpiece on the cork that puts you in tune, right? Wrong. The position of your mouthpiece on the neck should only be a ballpark guide. Push your mouthpiece on to make the sax sharper and pull off to make it flatter. This stands to reason pushing the mouthpiece further on the cork will make a slightly shorter tube length. That makes a higher pitch and vice versa. My advice is to adjust your mouthpiece on the cork to compensate for extremes of ambient temperature. But beyond that, my mouthpiece is almost always on the same position on the cork. If it's really cold, push on a bit. If it's a roasting gig, pull off a bit. What you shouldn't be doing is constantly tinkering about. If you're consistently flat across the whole instrument, push on. If you're consistently sharp, pull out. But don't get drawn into the game of trying to get individual notes in tune with the mouthpiece position. What you should be doing is using your vocal tract and possibly your tongue to fine-tune the pitch of each note as you play it. You'll often hear people say, lip it up, or words to that effect, but this is not something you should literally do. If you use your jaw to push your bottom lip onto the reed, you'll narrow your tip opening, stifle the reed, and get a thin, horrible sound. Instead, use your vocal tract to adjust the pitch. Full details on using your vocal tract and how it works can be found in my Altissimo video, linked above now. But basically, you can adjust the position of your larynx to vary the pitch of a note. Lowering the position of your larynx lowers the pitch of a note and vice versa. It's helpful to practice with your mouthpiece, but remember, when you use the full horn, you'll only be able to bend the notes a fraction of what you can with just the mouthpiece. To a lesser degree, the same thing can be done by keeping the tip of your tongue down and forward, but arching the front and middle portion up. Arching your tongue up will bring the pitch down. This is slightly more difficult to teach, but I'll be covering it in full in my new Total Tone Mastery course coming soon. You'll find that it's much easier to bend notes down than it is to pitch them up. For this reason, I tune my saxophone ever so slightly sharp on the cork, then use my vocal tract to ease down into the correct pitch. If I have any flat notes, it's then much easier to get them without trying to strain to raise the pitch. It's important to get familiar with what notes are flat and what notes are sharp on your sax and instantly adjust those notes as you play. After a while, it'll become second nature, but only if you consciously and diligently work at it over a period of time with a digital tuner. Your number one concern should be playing all the notes on the instrument in tune with the regular fingerings. However, this video wouldn't be complete unless I said that you can use alternative fingerings on some notes to adjust the pitch. There are far too many to list in full here, and they are very personal to each player. But as an example, take middle E. This is a pretty sharp note on my Mark 6, so sometimes I like to add my low B flat key to the standard E fingering. This brings the pitch down quite a bit. and I won't have to use my vocal tract to adjust it. Just be aware that these alternate fingerings will also change the timbre of the notes slightly. Watch the pitch dip down flatter as I add that low B flat key to the E. You can experiment with your own weird combos, and if you've got some good ones, please share them in the comments below so that I can try them out. In the bad old days, you'd just crack a tuning fork on something and put it on a table to resonate while you tried to match the pitch. Luckily, we all now have access to digital tuners, which makes life a lot easier. I'd say it's a virtually indispensable tool for any saxophonist who wants to sound better. If you're playing on your own, you can either get a posh app on your phone like Tonal Energy or a standalone digital tuner. I've had a Korg combined tuner and metronome for years now, and I love it. If you're playing in an ensemble situation, you can still check your tuning in real time by using a snark tuner or something similar. This type of tuner has a vibration setting. The microphone is off and it's just the vibration of the metal that gives the tuning. So you can be playing a chord with other instruments and still know where you are. I like to put mine on the neck where the vibration is strongest, although it also works on the bell. The only problem with the snarks is that the ball joint is continuously breaking. We used to have a graveyard of broken snarks in our theatre pit, so treat them carefully. An important thing to bear in mind whilst using a tuner is that the pitch that sounds best on a gig may not be the pitch where the needle is on zero. It's extremely unmusical to be self-righteously correct with your note, while the chord would sound better if you just matched everyone else. Although the horn section may be a little sharp or whatever, it'll sound better if you raise your pitch a little and match it. If the horn section as a whole is relatively in tune, it won't matter much if it's a bit off perfect pitch in the grand scheme of things. In other words, use the tuner as a tool, but always use your ears and put the music first. For example, if I'm playing an incognito and it's a hot gig and there are 5 unison E's in a row with the trumpet on a high E, I'm not going to play them on the green, then turn to the trumpet player and say, "Hey man, I think you were a bit sharp there." I just know that those trumpet notes are going to be sharp in that situation. So I'll play my E a bit sharper to make the trumpet player sound better. I promised I'd give you a tip for taking your intonation to ninja level, so here it is. Counterintuitive as it may seem, not all notes in the major scale sound best evenly divided into identical semitone increments. A piano is tuned like that for sure, but just as the greatest curse of sax is that we have the flexibility to play out of tune, we also have the gift of being able to play more in tune than a fixed instrument like piano or marimba. I don't have time to go into the full story of the equally tempered scale versus the just tempered scale, but suffice to say, when we use naturally occurring ratios, chords sound better if the pitch of certain notes is adjusted. For this video, I'm only going to focus on the most important adjustment, and that is to the third of the chord. When we're talking about tuning, we divide each semitone into cents. A cent is 1/100th of a semitone, and often your digital tuner will be marked in cents. If you are 50 cents sharp at a note, you could equally be 50 cents flat on the note above, if that makes sense. Anyway, in a major chord, the third should be flattened by about 14 cents, and in a minor chord, the third should be raised by about 16 cents. Don't get too concerned about the exact number of cents though. Just remember to flatten major thirds a bit and sharpen minor thirds a bit. I'll now demonstrate this so you can hear it for yourself. I'll play a concert B-flat major chord with 3 tenor saxes. That's a C major chord for tenor, the root C, the major third E, and the 5th G. I'll play the C and the G together first, and both these notes will be on 0 on the tuner. I'll then add the third, the E. First at equally tempered pitch, and then I'll flatten it. It's subtle, but hopefully you'll be able to hear that the chord settles down when the third is flattened, and it just sounds, well, better. if the chord is minor, that third should be sharpened. This time we'll use a C sharp minor chord for tenor. I'll do the same thing again, but using this minor chord instead. I'll play the root C sharp and the fifth G sharp at perfect pitch. Then I'll add the third, an E, at perfect pitch, then make it slightly sharper. Hopefully you'll notice the chord sound better when I sharpen that E. Finally, I'll demonstrate an interesting quirk of playing perfectly in tune. If the music has a C major chord, then a C sharp minor chord, but in the ensemble I'm holding a long E throughout, then in the middle of the note I actually need to change my tuning to match the chord. Weird, huh? I'm going to hit that E slightly flat for the C major chord and then make it slightly sharp for the C sharp minor chord. Check this out. Now bear in mind, this is an advanced concept. You need to be aware of what key you're in, what chord you're playing, and what note you're on in that particular chord. And even most professional musicians won't do that. Although most wind and string players will probably do it subconsciously. The point I'm getting across here is that tuning is not a fixed target. Yes, start by practicing every note in tune with a tuner, but be aware that in a real musical situation, things are more fluid. You can even start playing slightly sharper to have more of an exciting emotional impact in your solos. And it's worth remembering that using a reference pitch of A as 440 Hertz hasn't always been the case, and still isn't the case in many countries. Once again, pitch is a relative and flexible concept, but one that you should start to become more aware of if you want to sound better as a saxophonist. Let's have a very quick recap of what we've learned today then. Number 1, tuning makes a huge difference to how good you sound. Number 2, your saxophone is inherently out of tune, so deal with it. Number 3, don't fiddle about with your mouthpiece position too much, just use it for general ballpark tuning. Number 4, don't use your lip to tune, instead use your vocal tract or even your tongue. Number 5, get a digital tuner to practice with and get familiar with adjusting certain notes on your instrument. Number 6, in a performance situation, make sure you put the music first and try and tune intuitively, doing what sounds best, not just what's on the tuner screen. Hopefully you've learned something today, or at the very least become more aware of what you already knew. Don't forget to pick up your free PDF cheat sheet from the link in the description. And if you want to learn some more in-depth sax stuff, go to www.getyoursaxtogether.com/masterclass to get your free 1-hour lesson with me. As always, thanks for watching and supporting me. And if you're loving this channel, give the video a thumbs up, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon to be notified when I upload new content, and check out my Insta and Facebook pages. Next Sunday, you'll be learning the ripping baritone riff from Moaning by Charles Mingus, made famous by Leo P at the Proms. Until then, thanks for watching and have fun practicing. See ya. Second octave, D, E flat and E being sharp, and that's too fast. Slow down, you move too fast. This is slightly more difficult to teach, but cough up chicken. Cough up chicken.